Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy Fry Plantain, and today we're going to be checking out the latest Joe Rogan Experience podcast featuring Tim Dillon. Tim Dillon is a very popular comedian. Some people don't like him, but I've always been somewhat partial to the guy. So this should be very, very interesting indeed. If it's your first time on this channel, I'd greatly appreciate if you could tap that like button, comment below, and subscribe. And now, without further ado, let's do this.
Who released this new report that said 250,000 people? It says UK scraps police probes of legal social media posts after review says response went too far. So this is April 1st, 2026. But I just saw a thing about a guy getting arrested like a few days ago.
And we have rape gangs here, but ours are more successful.
I think that's a legal social media posts is which weird. So legal social media posts.
Right.
Their law is different than our law. They don't have freedom of speech over there. So
Right.
incitement to violence is a violation of their law.
Right.
So when it says legal, it could just be they went too far for things like cartoons or something like that. That's
Right.
not clearly not an incitement to violence. But would it find out, Jamie, what that report was about the rape gangs?
I was just there for 21 days. I was in London. I went to Paris for a couple of days, but I was in London primarily for 21 days. And you talk to different groups of people, and London's a global city. It's a cosmopolitan city. It's like New York. And, I think one of the things that, they're used to diversity there. And so they're not full on panicked about different types of people coming in. But there is undeniably a real problem outside of London, also in London, but outside of London because a lot of the economy is stagnated. So you're bringing people in. It's not clear immediately what jobs they'll do. And a lot of their cultures vary greatly from the English culture in a meaningful way. And that could be the rights of women. That could be the rights of gay people. That could be the opinions about freedom of speech. That could be freedom of religion, whatever it is. There is a cultural tension there between, immigrants, migrants coming in and the very established society that's been around for a very long time.
He's making some interesting points, and of course a lot of British people, well, not a lot, but there is a growing amount of British individuals who kind of agree with him, who are kind of sick and tired of all of these immigration policies and all of these individuals coming into the country. Now, of course, a lot of people in London tend to be on the left. A lot of people in London tend to vote leftist parties like, the Labour Party and maybe even the Green Party and maybe even, the Liberal Democrats, you know what I mean? Historically speaking, anyway. Recently, I'm sure you guys have heard, I'm sure you Americans have heard this, Keir Starmer is stepping down as the leader of the Labour Party. A lot of people seem to believe that Andy Burnham, a lot of people think that he's going to take over when it comes to, the next election. So yeah, very, very interesting things going on in Britain at the moment when it comes to politics. In regards to this immigration issue, yeah, it's a complex one. It's a very, very complex one. The argument that a lot of British people will make is that they're coming in and they're not contributing to society and they're not contributing to the economy. That's the popular argument that you'll hear from, certain individuals, certain British individuals. And while the vast majority of these individuals are white, working class British people, you do have a small proportion of, even blacks saying this same thing. I mean, recently, I believe it was like last month, there was that whole Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom march. A lot of British people were coming out, supporting the cause, and, this march, again, is to do with immigration, is to do with all the rape gangs, is to do with all of these things. So a lot of white British people are sick and tired of it. That's why a lot of people seem to believe that the Reform Party has a good chance of winning when it comes to the next general election. A lot of people believe that the Reform Party is gonna win. I'm not entirely sure about that, but who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen? Because right now, Reform is gaining numbers. A lot of British people are supporting Reform. We've gone from Labour being a very, very popular party to Keir Starmer stepping down. It's crazy. It's crazy right now. Politically speaking, it's very crazy right now. So I understand where Tim Dillon is coming from. The immigration issue in this country has just been getting more and more heated, more and more uncomfortable.
I mean, and this was covered up too. A lot of the grooming gang scandal there.
Yeah, so we're looking at it right now. It says this is on National Review, the UK's horrific rape gangs. So but there was, is this the rape gang inquiry report, right? So who put this report out? Members of Parliament and Restore Britain party leader Rupert Lowe. And so the investigators had limited powers, such as inability to compel witnesses or require sort of document production that could corroborate some of the most heinous victims. Viewed with those limitations in mind, the independent report is a damning collection of victim testimonies that vividly portray the sexual terrorism that occurred nationwide for decades. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, this is terrible. I mean, obviously. I mean,
I think they said it was 250,000 girls.
And this was covered up because the media didn't want to inflame anger against, population of migrants.
Right.
Most of whom I'm sure were innocent of this, obviously.
Obviously.
But it is something that, in a free society, everyone has the right to know if there are rape gangs in their country and who's operating them.
But isn't that crazy that under the guise of progressiveness, you've enabled rape gangs?
Well, 100%. It's crazy. But it's also incredibly, it's not shocking because the ends justify the means approach of politics seems to be what we're doing right now. Whereas basically, if the goal is to just eliminate whatever it's being called, like this patriarchal, white, male-dominated society, and if you want to get rid of that, and that's the end goal, a lot of people ignore what happens in the middle. Like, a lot of people aren't super concerned about whose rights are being respected in that process because their end goal really is to kind of decrease the power of people they disagree with. So I mean, it's like, it's hard to look at this and not see a design, and I don't quite know exactly where the design comes from, but it's odd that this is all happenstance because everybody knows it's happening and people are afraid to talk about it.
A lot of people are sick to death of hearing about these stories of these young white British girls getting abused, and even some of them are young black British girls, you know what I mean? A lot of people are sick to death of hearing these stories. And there's been a lot of, part of the reason why Keir Starmer again may have stepped down is simply because some British people were very critical of him and the Labour Party for not really aggressively tackling this issue. A lot of people were pissed off that it just seemed like the Labour Party weren't really doing much to tackle this growing issue. And that's why the individuals like Tommy Robinson have grown in popularity, why individuals like Rupert Lowe have grown in popularity, and of course, individuals like Nigel Farage have grown in popularity. Because of this, this scandal, this grooming gang scandal, you have a lot of innocents kind of getting caught up in the mix. You have a lot of innocent Muslims getting caught up in the mix. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's not the entire Muslim population here in the UK that are participating in this nonsense. Some people here in Britain associate it with, the Pakistani community, and even there, it's just a bit of an uncomfortable thing to even talk about, because if you say that word, it's almost like you're trying to suggest that it's the entirety of the Pakistani community, which isn't the case. But that's part of the problem. It's like when we talk about this topic, when we actually really delve into this topic, people get triggered because it's emotional. That's partly why the Labour Party have kind of distanced themselves away from this grooming gang situation. And naturally, a lot of people who vote Labour are, ethnic minorities, black people, Asian people. So Labour, the common argument, the common theory is that part of the reason why Labour wasn't as aggressive to tackle these grooming gang scandals is simply because they were trying to hold on to the Asian vote. That's the popular theory that you hear.
Stance, because everybody knows it's happening and people are afraid to talk about it. So I would imagine that at some point, For example, like countries like Ireland right now that are having lots of issues over this. It's, they're part of the EU, and the EU would set migration policy for Ireland. So the EU is a supranational organization that would basically say, here's how many migrants you have to admit. Here's your carbon emission standards. Here's your, monetary policy, whatever it is. And Ireland is kind of in that sense, they feel like they're losing their sovereignty. They're losing their ability to chart the course of their own country to a supranational organization that primarily seems concerned with the economics, because if you bring in more migrants, you can artificially grow the economy, which is what they're doing.
What we know about how Northern Ireland's riots were organized. There have been 3 nights of violence, and this is the 12th of June 2026. There have been 3 nights of violence on the streets of Northern Ireland. Homes and vehicles set on fire, water cannons deployed, more than a dozen police officers injured, and an atmosphere of fear has descended, with reports of people being threatened for having a different skin color and families being put out of their homes because they're black. Terrible. It all came after a knife attack in Belfast on Monday night, for which a Sudanese man has been charged with attempted murder. That's what it was. If I remember correctly, the news reports were saying that this Sudanese man was trying to decapitate a white Irish guy. I mean, that's absolutely insane. So that's essentially what triggered these riots. And of course, years before that, in London, there was another attack by a Muslim convert, a black Muslim British Nigerian convert. And he actually tried to, I believe he might have decapitated a British soldier who went by the name of Lee Rigby. And this was in London. This was in a place called Woolwich. At the time, I lived very close to that area. And so a lot of people were kind of drawing parallels between the Belfast attack and the Lee Rigby attack. And the Lee Rigby attack was so violent, was so vicious. There were videos online, sick videos online of the guy who did it with his bloody hands holding a knife. So it got people emotional. This Belfast attack really, really got people emotional. They started thinking about, previous terrorist attacks and all sorts. And so naturally, it makes sense that this would kind of descend into violence and chaos and riots. It actually makes sense. This always happens. I remember in 2011 in London, there was a young black man who was shot and killed by the police. And that caused a lot of riots in 2011. A lot of major riots in 2011. And people were destroying areas in London, literally just, ransacking stores and stealing. And this always happens when there's a violent attack. When someone is murdered, it usually descends into chaos. It's just a human kind of barbaric thing. I don't know why it happens. I just think it's within our nature to do that. But here we have it, man in court charged with attempted murder over Belfast attack. So yeah, this is what triggered the riots. This is essentially what triggered the riots.
You can artificially grow the economy, which is what they're doing. A lot of people in Europe are not having children. So a lot of these economies are run by people that are not really too concerned about the cultural landscape of bringing migrants in. They're looking more about how do we grow this economy? How do we get cheap, help and how do we get workers? And a lot of it is you're getting third world migrants. Some of it's genuine refugees for sure, but a lot of it's economic migration. People are coming for better life. Hard to blame them. But do the people that live in those countries get to have a better life?